Kia ora koutou katoa. Welcome to the latest ArchNZ webinar. Thanks very much for joining live and joining on time. I'm Lennon Bedford, Reality Capture Specialist here at Global Survey, and I'm really excited to have you join for our latest members presentation. All right, so today it's my great pleasure to have Barakauskas join us from the deep south, Patersons down in Dunedin, and he's going to take us through an exciting project he's had on his books in the last few months. And yeah, I had the pleasure of supporting Matis with some of the tech used in this project. And as soon as I saw it, I knew this was a great use case for the wider ArchNZ group. As you know, when we reinforce all the time, this is a members group. You know, it's all about you, our members. And so yeah, really good to have Matis join us today to share some of the workflows and deliverables that have come out of this exciting project. Feel free to ask questions, so please use the questions tab in the GoToWebinar platform, and we'll collate those and then address them all at the end of the presentation. And then after Matis is finished and we've had the questions, I've got a few updates on upcoming events, and there's many of them, so lots to look forward to. So a short introduction from me. Matis is a senior surveyor with Patersons in Dunedin. So for those of you who don't know, Patersons is a large multidisciplinary survey engineering planning company based in the South Island of New Zealand. So offices in Otago, Central Otago and Canterbury. And Matis is a graduate of the surveying school down at Otago. I noted that he was the operations manager at the Captain Cook Tavern, which I thought was worth noting. Pretty cool. And a full circle here, because as part of this project, the facade of the Captain Cook Tavern would have been captured. So full circle. Matis is a licensed terrestrial surveyor, but really spends a lot of time leading up their geospatial work. So this includes everything from high precision control surveys right through to reality capture work. So they have an RTC 360 from us, which they're deploying regularly. They have aerial LiDAR for their UAVs. And so Matis and his team are really leveraging on the latest reality capture technology, which is fantastic. And we really enjoy supporting them with that. So without further ado, I'm going to pass you over to Matis to further introduce himself and show us this exciting project. So down to Dunedin. Over to you, Matis.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning into this webinar today. I'd like to start by saying a big thank you to Lennon and the team at Global Survey for the opportunity to talk about one of our recent projects. My name is Barakauskas, and I'm a senior surveyor with Patersons and am based in our Dunedin office. I have a background that's largely focused on laser scanning, and in my role I get to be involved in some pretty neat and technical projects across the South Island. These projects often encourage and beg the use of different and exciting technologies to complete our work. So today I will be going over our survey of State Highway 1 in Dunedin, discussing some of the challenges encountered and how our survey methods and data integration helped us to overcome these challenges. When this survey brief hit my inbox, I knew this project was going to be a little bit different from the usual requests. This survey was for the purposes of planning roading upgrades to support the ongoing new Dunedin hospital project. And the area really spanned all the way from the Oval to the south to Pine Hill at the northern end of Dunedin, which are the two main entry and exit points for central Dunedin if you're traveling via State Highway 1. Our client had identified 14 areas that required detailed survey information, and each site ranged in size from a quarter of an intersection to complete and full-scale surveys of major intersections. These sites added up to a total of approximately 7 kilometers of road corridor to be surveyed. People familiar with Dunedin will recognize some of these areas, as traffic safety concerns at some of these sites seem to pop up in the news every now and then. Specifically Pine Hill, which is the big yellow area at the bottom left of the screen now. Those of you that work with consultants will know that survey briefs are often either very vague or very prescriptive. Luckily for us, this one was concise and allowed us to determine the challenges almost immediately. The brief called for a full 3D survey of the key areas of State Highway 1 shown on the last slide for both above ground and below ground features. This meant they wanted full coverage on all drainage assets underground. So the accuracies required were plus minus 10 millimeters on hard stand surfaces like carriageways, curbs, retaining walls. And then for the softer areas like grass and gardens, plus minus 50 mil was required. In terms of deliverables, we were to submit an electronic data package containing a digital terrain model, 3D CAD files, and 12 DA files of the final outputs. And all of the surveyed features needed to be feature coded in their own layers. So if you took the brief at face value, it was a pretty typical topo survey request. The extra bit here was establishing and supplying a control network for set out and construction for when they would eventually begin roadworks. And the cherry on top was the deadline was less than 4 weeks away. So this presented a number of challenges that needed quite a bit of thought to ensure a successful outcome. The first challenge was the subject roads. The survey extents were located entirely within State Highway 1 corridors, which are separated within Dunedin. This network splits into two one-way corridors, and that's separated by approximately 100 to 120 meters of city block, right the way down from north to south. You can see this on screen where State Highway 1 is actually two parallel red lines there. This bifurcation happens at Pine Hill, where the northern motorway enters the city, and then it continues all the way down to the oval, where it converges and then continues in a single corridor again. This obviously increased the survey area. It would have been easier and nicer if both carriageways were located within one corridor. Another challenge was the amount of traffic that uses State Highway 1 daily. With annual average daily traffic ranging from 8 to 18,000 vehicles per day, safety to people became a major concern immediately. One of our aims was to make sure that we removed any danger to our surveyors, the public, other road users, as well as all the equipment we wanted to use. So these AADT values mean that the field work would be happening on roads that are class levels 1 through to 3, which can require some pretty significant traffic management measures. And typically these measures for roads like this will only be approved for nighttime, for night shifts. We had some initial discussions with local providers, and the indicative costings we received were pretty high, so this job was starting to look pretty expensive. Another challenge was the accuracies required here. Many roading surveys are often completed to the NZTA survey specifications document, and the clients wanted a higher level of accuracy on this one, specifically for the hard stand surfaces. So meeting these specs meant that we had to choose the equipment we were using carefully. The easiest method would be RTK GNSS, and unfortunately most hardware today offers 8 mil horizontally and 15 mil vertically, and so this was pretty much ruled out immediately. Finally, time constraints were actually the biggest challenge on this job for a couple of reasons. As mentioned earlier, there was a very quick turnaround of less than 4 weeks before the client wanted their outputs. Our initial discussions with the traffic management providers, we were informed that traffic management applications for this sort of work would require a 3-week processing period with NZTA, which is obviously quite a significant chunk of our project timeframe. And any drainage dipping, so all the below ground stuff, would only be able to be done at night. So this would be slow and expensive for our client. Luckily, they deferred this part of the project until a later date. So we needed to come up with a way to get this job done in a way that made it feasible for our client while making it safe, efficient, and accurate. So the big question. The solution ended up involving using a series of different scanning technologies, enabling us to minimize traffic disruption and keep people out of the road corridor as much as possible. So the first solution the first sensor we had was we elected to use mobile laser scanning to survey the majority of the survey extents. These mobile mapping systems provide a combination of accuracy and speed that makes it pretty ideal for the sort of corridor survey. These systems consist of a scanner head or multiple scanner heads, GNSS antennas, IMUs, and other vehicle sensors to collect data during the survey, which would obviously be later processed to generate a point cloud. For this, we engaged the Woods geospatial team to complete this phase, and the field support would come directly from the Patersons team at the Dunedin office. So specifically, we supplied all the control data necessary for Woods to ensure their outputs were accurate and georeferenced. And this phase was a collaborative effort, and it was executed pretty smoothly considering the limited mobilization time we had on this one. Due to the limitations of mobile laser scanning systems, there are areas that cannot be captured from a vehicle-mounted scanner. These areas were surveyed using a combination of terrestrial laser scanning and kinematic scanning, where we used the Leica RTC 360 and a CHCNav RS10. Each were deployed a little bit differently with different tasks, but ultimately they both filled the gaps that the mobile laser scanner couldn't get to. And the RTC 360 was also tasked with being our main checking tool for MLS data verification. Finally, the latest available Dunedin LiDAR dataset was also used to supplement data in some vegetated areas. So to answer the question, we used 3 different types of scanners and 3 different types of scanning, as well as adding in some LiDAR integration. Now that we've covered the scanners used, let's go over the workflow. This obviously here this is a very basic overview, and I'll go into a bit more detail. But to summarize, it's a pretty standard workflow when working with this sort of data. The first phase is the control phase. So we needed to establish control marks at every single survey site. To do this, the Patersons team completed a series of rapid static observations to establish some baselines for each site. We tied into the 2 local core stations. We had OUSD at the survey school and DUND on the Otago Peninsula. Additionally, we also tied this network into several existing high order marks, and that allowed us to assess our network adjustments and refine where necessary. Once the GNSS data had been processed, our teams headed out and installed a series of control marks using total stations, adding them to the overall control network. Once these had been processed and verified that all control marks were accurate and reliable, we were supplied with a list of proposed ground control points for the mobile scanner, and this would obviously be used as part of their workflow when they're processing. So our surveyors headed out, surveyed all of the GCPs that were proposed, and with the exception of one, which was too dangerous to get. And then at the same time, we also picked up all of our independent observations for verification of the mobile scanning outputs. Which brings us to the next phase. So the MLS capture phase. This portion was completed by Woods. It was completed at night, and this was in efforts to maximize the data capture. At nighttime, there's obviously less traffic and a smaller number of cars that are parked, which could obscure areas from the scanner. And due to this happening at night, the camera systems were not used, so the final point clouds contained no true color information. The capture was split into a series of missions, with the scanning head oriented at different angles of capture relative to the vehicle trajectory. By using this approach, the mobile laser scanner was able to see forwards and backwards, which ultimately helped to increase the point cloud coverage and minimize the shadows. The raw data was then post-processed, refined, and georeferenced using the supplied GCP information. The outputs delivered to us at Patersons were a series of georeferenced and classified point clouds. So one of the most critical tasks for us at Patersons was to verify that the accuracy of the mobile scanner outputs met what we needed to meet. For checking this, we did this two ways. As mentioned, during the GCP observations, our surveyors also collected independent check shots using total stations. These are compared against the mobile scanning outputs to confirm the reliability. Our random observations focused around the hardscape surfaces where we had the strictest tolerances on this project, and so examples of this were we would survey building faces, road surfaces, power boxes, etc. And generally speaking, the mobile scanning point clouds agreed with our independent check shots with only a handful of outliers. The second method of verification was using a laser scanner, so the RTC, to perform random spot check scans or ground truthing scans. This served as a dual purpose check. We were able to determine the relative accuracy of the mobile data, and it provides a source of truth. So I'll share a couple of screen grabs from our analysis of the truthing surveys. The first is already on screen. As you can see from the statistics there, this portion of the mobile data generally meets the accuracy specs required. There are a few areas that exceed the accuracies required, but upon visual inspections, we determined it was due to refractive and reflective noise, vegetation, and areas where debris had actually moved in between the surveys. So talking about leaves and litter in the gutters. For this example, you can see that approximately 82% of the points were within the required accuracies of the ground truth data. The points in orange and red are all centered around the grassy areas, where the required accuracies were obviously a little bit looser at 50 mils. Once we finished analyzing and comparing our truthing scans, we were pretty satisfied that the mobile scanning outputs met our requirements for this project. So one of the big limitations of mobile laser scanning systems are the shadows it can produce. And this is due to the system being constrained to the carriageway during capture. As part of our verification and QA phase, we identified the areas where these shadows were located. And while many of these were actually minimized due to minimal traffic at nighttime, we still identified a significant amount of shadows where the main cause was actually these bike lane separators, and these can be seen on the image on the right. Overall, we actually counted these out, and there was 197 of these that created shadows, ranging in length from 1 meter all the way to 20 or 30 meters. Surveying these conventionally was going to take a lot of time that we really didn't have on this project. The other areas that also had shadows were due to vegetation and canopies and steeper banks falling away from the road edge, which can be seen on the image on the left. So those areas highlighted in red. So to go where the mobile scanner couldn't, we chose to use an RS10 to capture that missing data as efficiently as possible. For those not familiar with this unit, it collects LiDAR data as well as imagery and has an integrated GNSS antenna which can receive RTK corrections. So this is really useful because it also has a physical point on the handle which can be used to measure and store GCPs for refinement during processing. Using this unit, our team was able to survey the missing areas at all of the sites in less than 6 hours. Doing this via total station would have taken a couple of days on site at least, not to mention significant traffic management. So this fly-through video is actually the result of a single mission, which took 11 minutes. The surveyor did not enter any live lanes on the road and therefore reduced the risk to people. Unfortunately, during our excitement in getting to use this bit of kit, we didn't actually get any images or videos of the unit in action, so we'll had to settle for some stock imagery there. So the RS-10 surprised us. The amount of data captured in such short windows, while being able to log real-world positions, was pretty impressive. This image here is one of our sites with the trajectory of the RS-10, and it is taken directly from the processing software prior to any refinement. So you can see that it's actually done a great job of capturing everything that we needed while keeping out of the dangerous areas, which is the road. All of this data was processed within the native software, which is called Copre. Luckily for us, we already use the software for our LiDAR sensor, and so we're very familiar with it, very familiar with the functions and how to refine this, and it allowed us to hit the ground running. So now the software offers 3 options for processing the field data. You can select either RTK optimization, PPK optimization, or SLAM only, which can be used indoors where there's obviously no GNSS visibility. There was a little bit of trial and error in getting the most accurate processing workflow, but we generally stuck to the PPK method and then applied GCP corrections at the end right before we merged it with the other data sets. As we started to integrate this data with the mobile scanning outputs, we ran into some challenges with the longer missions. The drift of the RS-10 introduced enough error that wasn't entirely corrected by GCPs or by the post-process GNSS data. Our experience was that the final data was susceptible to drift, largely dependent on the environment and longer mission capture times. And we also found that error could actually be introduced, could be introduced quite easily if the capture speed was too fast. So if the surveyor was walking too fast, certainly wouldn't recommend putting this thing on a car and driving fast with it. However, when we started looking at smaller areas, the areas we were interested in, like these bike lane separators, the data was actually was relatively accurate and resembled the true physical environment and actually matched up to a lot of our check obs. So obviously this slice you see here is a pretty unsatisfactory result for the initial registration. So we weren't happy with it, and what we wanted to do from here is we wanted to figure out a way to integrate these clouds to prevent us needing to go back out with a total station, which for almost 200 of these bike lane separators would have taken a very long time. Through some trial and error, we found that the most repeatable solution for registration excuse me, was to clip out the areas of interest, and we would then apply some noise filters, remove major artifacts, do a little bit of manual cleaning before rerunning our registration. After these cleaning steps were completed, the registration went a whole lot smoother. What you can see on screen at the moment was the pre-clean registration, and now it's not great results. It certainly didn't meet the survey accuracy specs. A significant portion of the points here are outside of these tolerances by 20 to 30 to 40 millimeters. But once we applied the revised registration method, we found significant improvements. So we could go from what you see on screen to this. So the bulk of the data here matches up within 5 millimeters of the mobile scanning data. So this satisfied what we wanted to use this kinematic output for. Ultimately our end use for this data was to confirm the missing parts of the bike lane separators, rather than trying to interpolate that info in the shadows and trying to take a stab in the dark as to how much we should offset the top of each curb. Once we finalized the RS10 registrations, we took some slices. We did a thorough visual check on the registration, and really the aim here was to make sure there was no misalignments or any other gross errors. When analyzing these slices between the MLS and the and the RS10 data, we found that the vertical separation was actually minimized and generally agreed with the mobile point clouds. So we had quite a bit more confidence in using this data now after our initial registrations. And during the final QA of the combined point clouds, we found an area that had been missed by the mobile scanner, the RTC, and the RS10 scanner, and that's outlined in red on the left side there. This actually is a rather steep area at the Pine Hill site, and the canopy cover was pretty significant, so we couldn't zip back out there with a GPS to pick it all up. There's also a bit of risk there where it's tough to tell in that image, but that actually abuts directly to the Leith River there, so like a concrete stormwater drain. So from here, we actually downloaded and compared publicly available LiDAR data against the mobile scanning data, and we found that the LiDAR road surfaces were generally within 20 to 30 mils of the mobile scanner road surfaces. So in that slice on the right, you can see how the denser point cloud is the mobile scanning data, and then the red point cloud is actually the LiDAR data, which offered significantly more penetration and more points on the ground there. Based on that, we were pretty happy to accept the LiDAR data as is for that area highlighted, and this was the only area we actually needed to do this for. So that's basically that's all the scanning data has now been combined at this point. By using this methodology, we almost completely eliminated the need for any conventional surveying methods for the topo phase. Over the whole project, our surveyors only needed to return to pick up approximately 5 meters of curb with a total station, which is obviously a whole lot less than the 7 kilometers that needed to be surveyed. So the final phase was generating the deliverables. As we previously mentioned, the required outputs were 3D CAD and 3D 12D files, and these files needed to contain all of the surveyed features as well as a digital terrain model and contours. Our feature extraction was completed entirely within Cyclone 3DR, and we automated as much as possible to reduce our manual workloads. The first tool we used was the automated curb extraction script, which you see in action here, and this was heavily used on this project. To use this tool, we input some basic parameters like the sampling rate and curb profiles, and then 3DR chugged along and did the best it could to extract the top and bottom of each curb. Now, while this was pretty helpful and saved some time for us, a thorough check of all the extracted curb lines was required. As you can see, this tool it can make mistakes which required corrections before we could even think about using the data. And even with a lot of manual rework, we saved a considerable amount of time in the office as 3DR did the heavy lifting on the curb extraction. Another way we automated some of our extraction was to extract tree trunks using some of the native functions within 3DR. We followed a series of steps that involved creating an initial ground surface. This was then translated upwards by a meter, and we then separated the points on the cloud within 20 mils or so of that DTM. This created a point cloud slice that contained data at 1 meter above the ground level of each tree. And from here on, we were able to clean up the point cloud. We removed any data that wasn't a tree, and turns out there's actually a lot of non-tree objects that exist at 1 meter AGL. You can see here in the video, I'm kind of flying around here and working my way through eliminating all the stuff that isn't a tree. Following that, we segmented the clouds using the distance function in 3DR. And this resulted in individual mini clouds of each tree slice, which we could then best fit circles to represent the tree trunks. Now, while trees aren't perfect circles, there was a bit of refinement required, and the size and position of some of these needed to be adjusted for them to be accurate. Like the curve extraction tool, there were a few failures in this workflow, but and we needed to remove and repeat some of the extraction, but ultimately it actually saved us quite a bit of time in doing it this way. So there was hundreds of trees needed extracting on this job, and yeah, as you can see, I think this whole process, that was a 9-minute process just for those trees, sped up to a minute 30 or something like that. So to summarize, our project methodology was obviously a combination of mobile laser scanning, terrestrial scanning, kinematic scanning, and a little bit of LiDAR integration. The kinematic scanning was due to MLS shadows present, and this scanning actually proved to be quite tricky to integrate, and we needed to work in small areas due to the slam drift. Our feature extraction was completed in 3DR, as you just saw, a combination of automated workflows and some manual extraction. And ultimately, we produced a digital terrain model and issued all of the 3D data to the client in the formats requested. This fly-through was created after the Pine Hill site extraction was completed and was included in the deliverables. I'm a huge believer that when it comes to laser scanning, clients need to be able to see what they've paid good money for. 3D visuals, whether it's videos, models, 3/4 screen grabs, they're generally the quickest way to convey spatial context. And actually, these fly-throughs, they make great marketing materials as well. Just to wrap this presentation up, I wanted to share some of the key learnings on this project. The first is to discuss some numbers around what made our approach cost effective for our client. Part of the initial pricing, we discussed with local, I've already mentioned this, but we've discussed with local traffic management providers, and the traffic management for this portion of State Highway 1 at these 14 individual sites would have incurred significant costs and would have taken quite a long time to actually get all the approvals in place. By electing to use the mobile scanning, we were able to reduce our data capture costs by approximately 14%, and by using the MLS, we actually also removed the need for the temporary traffic management, which reduced the price the initial price by another 30%. And then going on to using the RS10 to measure or to survey all the bike lane separators rather than using a total station, we're able to save an additional 7%, roughly. So this combination of scanners ultimately offered a cost reduction of approximately 50% from a method that uses only conventional methods and that requires surveyors on foot within the road corridor there. So the other major key takeaways in this was that the SLAM sensor, while it was impressive and they've obviously improved significantly over the last few years, they may not necessarily be at a point where they can be used on a daily basis. If we were to repeat the survey, we would probably look into planning our missions a little bit differently to optimize coverage and ultimately accuracy. And finally, anything automated needs to be QA'd extensively. These automated workflows certainly helpful, and they did save us a lot of time, but we still did have to rework a fair chunk of these extractions. The great thing with 3DR is that we've been able to convert some of these workflows to scripts, to in-house scripts that we will then be able to, it'll just make future projects easier and quicker. So that wraps it up on this job. Look, I'd like to again thank Global Survey for having me present today, and I also like to extend a massive thank you to the team here at Patersons that put in the long hours to get this job delivered on time. Thanks so much.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Martis. That was a really great presentation. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I assume everyone else did. I'm going to bring you back to my screen. So yeah, I mean, for me, some of the key takeaways, great to see some out-of-the-box thinking to address those, pretty difficult challenges on that section of road. I love the fact you're open to collaborating with others and bringing in tech, that you don't own in-house, like the RS10, and giving it a go. And yeah, I mean, I think probably the biggest takeaway for me is the fact that, I mean, it's well, I guess, accepted that reality capture can, can capture the most data, the highest resolution, maybe the greatest accuracies, but it's not always seen as the cheapest way to do a job. So yeah, to chuck this sort of tech at a job like this and come out with cost savings for your client and increase your productivity, I think it's amazing. So great to see. Feel free to chuck any questions you may have in the questions tab. We've got a couple here. Interesting to see you're combining data sets from multiple sources. Do you mind me asking which software you use to put all the data together and to register it into to the tight tolerances you were seeking?
Yep. Yeah. So we actually use a combination of we kept it entirely in-house, and we're very entrenched in the Leica Geosystem software. So we did it all in Register 360 and 3DR. Mm-hmm. We did, yeah. There was a little bit of bouncing around backwards and forwards, as I kind of discussed. We obviously had to apply some cleaning filters to some of the RS10 data set that came in pretty noisy, which definitely affected the registration in 360. Excuse me. But ultimately, yeah, we're able to get it done with both of those.
Excellent. Yeah, I think it's cool that you could, the RS10 data. I mean, you look at the spec sheet, you're only going to get a few centimeters off the bat, but I think that's where surveyors in particular can take these tools and add value, right? Use survey methodology and workflows to bring that data down to survey grade accuracies. It's good to see. And were you using mainly cloud to cloud? Were you using like the MMS data set as the kind of core cloud and then registering everything against that, or did you use a combination of targets and things?
Yes, when the kinematic scanning was registered to the mobile data set, as mentioned in smaller sections. But when we were doing our truthing scans, that was completed with independent targets, while still using the same control network as the wood system. We set up targets kind of in areas further away from their GCP locations, just to really test out how accurate the data set was, and everything looked pretty good to us.
Yeah, awesome. I was interested, so it was clear the client was after some traditional CAD type deliverables. Were they also at all interested in seeing the raw point cloud in like a free viewer, so they could interact with it and use it maybe for just for context, or not at all?
Not on this one. My understanding is the data set we provided to them was then forwarded on to their client. But what we did get asked was, we got asked to retain all of this data and all the point cloud data for future works, as we believe there may be other areas they might be interested in once this first round is complete. So yeah, so we'll see after that.
Yeah, great. I think you should have some more questions in your chat, Martis, if you can see them.
Yes. So there's a question here about would the 360 to go be better suited than the SLAM? I don't actually personally have a whole lot of experience with the 360, but the RS10 I've had it demoed before, and I had my hands on it once or twice, so I was pretty familiar with it. It was available. It was actually in Dunedin, I believe, when we requested the hire of it, and it was a workflow we were familiar with, so we chose to go with that one.
Yeah, I can add a little bit to that too. So the BLK to go could have been used in the same way. The advantage of the RS10 in this case is you've got the RTK antenna integrated, so it was georeferenced within a couple of few centimeters immediately, which gives Martis a massive head start when it comes to registering it to the main data set.
Yeah, definitely. There's another question here about how large was the final deliverable. Excuse me. The CAD files we sent through were only, I think it was maybe 100 megabytes, a couple hundred megabytes at most. But the mobile scanning point clouds was sizable. We're talking, I want to say we are talking probably, I just this is off the top of my head, but probably close to 100, 120 gigabytes. And then yeah, my experience with point clouds is that's probably been decimated a little bit, and how clean those point clouds were, there was definitely some noise removed, so that was already reduced from what the raw point cloud would have been. All in all, it still adds to the pain point, which hasn't been quite solved, of if this is a great way to collect a massive ton of data that you then need to store somewhere. There's another question here about asking if UAV LiDAR would be an option. It was an option on this job. We actually looked at flying our LiDAR unit for that area where we use the publicly available LiDAR. And unfortunately, the time constraints here didn't really allow us to do that, as that we kind of discovered that area towards the end of our QA. In future, we probably could fly UAV LiDAR for a job like this. In Dunedin, we are most of the city's covered. Like, you're pretty restricted on where you can fly due to where all the helipads and the aerodromes are. So there's a very small portion of North Dunedin up in Northeast Valley that you can fly without any approvals. And unfortunately, that wasn't part of our survey area. So if that's
very good.
If we're waiting on any other questions, what I'd like to say as well is if anyone does think of any other questions in the future about this or anything else, feel free to shoot me a message on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to discuss all things laser scanning and point clouds, and obviously happy to answer any other questions somebody might come up with.
Great stuff. Thanks, Mattis.
Thanks, Lennon.
All right. Like, I'm just going to thanks again. That was excellent. And then looking forward, so we've got a few exciting plans in the works. Next up is Graham Watson, who's a member probably well known to the community, and he's going to talk to us about his experience with the new Leica TRK mobile mapping system. So Road Science used the Pegasus 2 Ultimate, but they had the opportunity to do this job on the Bathurst racetrack over in Australia, and took the opportunity to hire in a latest TRK system, and so he's going to share his experience with that, which will be really interesting to see. So please sign up on the webpage there and join us on the 5th of August. A second one in August, double header. Kirsty and I are going to provide a bit of an update for you Leica software users amongst us on the latest updates to Register 360 and Cyclone 3DR. So there's some pretty significant updates that are now available. We're going to run through the key value in those. So feel free to join that. And other events Global Survey's running that are related to autonomy and reality capture. We've got a autonomous technology roadshow kicking off in Auckland in just a couple of weeks, or less than a couple of weeks. And this is going to feature some USVs, so unmanned surface vessels for hydrographic surveying in a fully autonomous fashion, airborne LiDAR, again from a CHC stable, and then some mobile laser scanning, including the RS-10. So yeah, demo day in Auckland, Christchurch and Dunedin, so feel free to sign up on our website. I should have put the link in there, but you'll find it on our website. And then if that whets your appetite, we're going to have a deeper dive into these technologies in a pre-conference workshop. So any of you out there planning to attend the Survey and Spatial Conference in Christchurch in September, the day before we're running 2 workshops actually. In the morning, Bruce and Richard are running a GNSS workshop, and then in the afternoon we have a autonomy and reality capture workshop. So the same tech you'll see in the road shows, but we'll take a deeper dive into the workflows and how you can put the data sets together into a single model and automate some of the extraction for deliverables out the other end. So that's in the amazing Avon room of the Christchurch Town Hall, looking out over the Avon River. So we'll run the boat up the river. It'll be a lot of fun and hopefully a lot of learning as well. So please sign up for that on our website. And that's it for today. So as always, please send us your feedback. Get in touch if you have a project you'd like to share with the group. We're firm believers in us sharing our knowledge and becoming stronger together. Feel free to post your content online. They've got their LinkedIn group, which is rarely used, but feel free to jump in there. We'd love to see some of your content. And that's it for today. Thanks again to Mattis, and catch you at the next session next month.